Welcome to the All-Star Athlete Podcast, your guide to mastering the mental game and reaching your full potential.
Today, our guest is John Damon, a personal trainer, mindset coach, and self-described human potential maximizer who's spent over 3 decades working with Hollywood talent, Fortune 500 executives, and coaches and players across the NFL and NBA. A former Division I football player under Tom Coughlin at Boston College, John has built his entire philosophy around one core idea: helping people maximize their potential in body, soul, and mind. In today's episode, we get into what actually separates elite performers from everyone else, why safety has to come before you can ever ask for someone's best effort, and the real difference between holding someone accountable and simply criticizing them. John also shares key nuggets of his philosophy that rent is due every day, why the people you let onto your bus determine the quality of your life, and what he's learned about fulfillment from watching some of the most successful people in the world still end up unfulfilled. This one covers a lot of ground: mindset, coaching, identity, and what it actually means to be present. And John brings decades of hands-on experience to every answer. Enjoy the show. I wanted to formally welcome John Damon to the show. It's a pleasure having you join us today. And for anyone hearing your name for the first time, John, how do you introduce yourself these days? And I'm not specifically talking about your resume. What is the way that you would actually describe what you do if someone asked you at like a dinner party?
Yeah, well, the first thing I would say is that I help people maximize their potential. That is what I do. 1,000,000%. I maximize my clients, my friends, my families, hopefully my own potential. I think that's what I was put on this earth to do, and that's my mission to help try to do that every day that I can.
Okay, so you, in a nutshell, help people maximize their potential. That's kind of what you do on a day-to-day basis.
Body, soul, and mind, for sure.
Okay, and you've been doing that for, if I understand correctly, 20, 30 years at least?
I've been certified as a personal trainer since 1991, and hopefully I've been kind and been pouring into people for all 53 years of my life, 54 years and a couple weeks. But yeah, I've been doing that a long time.
Yeah, and so you've been in rooms with Hollywood talent, Fortune 500 execs, NFL and NBA coaches and players, probably among others. Amongst all those opportunities, what's the through line? Like, what are you actually being hired to do by these people?
Well, I think that I'm being hired to help maximize potential or to see things that they might not be seeing. I think that, on the physicality side, right? I think everyone, as long as they have 2 arms, 2 legs, and a trunk, I can get them in better shape. I think that a good physical coach can get more out of you than you could get out of yourself. And I think that having a schedule and some of those other components really can add to yourself physically. Now, mentally, I think that that's really one of the most fun part that I get to do. I think that, we talk a lot about when you're a team or you're a world builder, you got to break it down. Like, some people do it and they get lucky, but there are certain components that you have to have, such as safety or certainty. And if you don't have that, you're not going to be able to build anything. It's like we could have this wonderful podcast, but if there was machine gun fire everywhere, I might not really be able to concentrate on your questions. And I think you can't build culture without having a really giant foundation of safety.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you on that one. I'm sure you're probably familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
Yeah, I don't have it memorized, but yes.
So Maslow's hierarchy of needs, just for you and for anyone that's listening who may not be familiar with what that theory or concept is it's kind of a pyramid. And at the bottom, we have things like food, water, shelter, safety, like basic needs. And the theory goes like you can't focus on anything above that, like working at your job or building relationships or self-actualization without first having your baseline needs met. Like, for example, if you didn't have food, you wouldn't be worried about being on this podcast with me today. You'd be worried about finding food.
Not unless you were paying me in food.
Right, exactly. That would be the extrinsic or intrinsic motivation. So
I call that out of the human needs. I call that certainty. I think that knowing your mortgage is being paid, that you have food to eat, clean water to drink. I think that these are the certainties that we do need before we can worry about any other component, what fulfills us, what our purpose is, whatever else it may be. If you don't have the basic human needs, then you are going to have a harder life. That is for sure.
Could not agree more with you on that point. And I do want to talk to you more about safety a little bit later in the episode. But while we're on the topic of maximizing potential, I wanted to ask you, at what point in your life did you realize that one of your missions or purposes or passions or goals was to, whether it be maximize your potential or other people's potentials? When did you figure that out?
Well, I think I always wanted to maximize my own potential because, I loved baseball when I was young, and I still love it now. I actually was, in my last session, was talking to a young man about how I still love hitting. Like when I was his age, I could just have my mother pitch to me and, hit baseballs by the hour and never get exhausted. I've never been like, can I go play Fortnite, Mom? Like that was not my focus. My focus was on becoming the best hitter that I could become. And I was lucky to have heroes, whether it was the Ted Williams, George Brett's, Jim Rice's of the world, where I wanted to hit like them, Lou Gehrig, and just, I would study and read anything I could about any of these incredible hitters to try to just figure out one part of the puzzle to become better or to maximize my potential. And then I think as you get older, it goes towards more things. It might be as a student, it might be as a football player, it might be as a basketball player, it might be, as a friend, right? Like I think being a good friend and being a good human, being a great dad, I think these are all things that you need to maximize. But if you're not trying to get better, then it is very, very hard to even realize you want to maximize potential if you don't have any conscious thought about that.
Yeah, if you're kind of just mired in mediocrity and not really thinking about becoming the best version of yourself, you're kind of just accepting that what is and not really worried about getting better, then you're not really ever going to get better or become the best version of yourself or maximize your potential, right?
Yeah, I think that you're a tumbleweed. I mean, I think you're literally going with the wind. And the old Nick Saban thing is that mediocrity does not like excellence and excellence does not like mediocrity. And I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, so I wanted to ask you about that as well. I'm sure there's a lot of, I kind of browsed your website and your portfolio and stuff. You got a lot of kind of lines and mindsets and mantras that you live by that I want to ask you about. But speaking about football in particular, you played football at Boston College under Tom Coughlin, who most people, at least if you're at least semi-aware of the sports world or the NFL or college football, you've heard of Tom Coughlin. Yeah, before any of your professional career took off, you played D1 college football. What is one thing that he drilled into you as a player that you still to this day utilize as a tool or a mindset?
Well, I think one of the best things that he did is he had what's called a concentration line. So it was literally a dotted line after you left the locker room and before you stepped on the field. And the rule was once you step over this imaginary line, the only thing you focus on is football. So there's no talking to your friend about like, oh my God, what did you get for number 3 on the history test? Or like, oh, are you going to take, Brittany to the bar on Friday night? It was only football. And I think that what he was doing, whether it was intentional or not intentional, is that he was making you understand that when you're on that field, you're going to have an identity as a football player, and more so than that, a Boston College football player. And I think that's a really, really important thing to know. And if that's the case, like now, one of the things like with studying that, kind of like the Maslow laws and that wonderful stuff, is that what your identity is comprised of is three things: your physiology, your focus, and your language. And I think you start having the physiology of a football player, you start having the language of a football player, and you start having the focus of a football player, you're going to probably be a football player. And that's awesome.
Yeah. So do you use some sort of like imaginary line today? Like when you step into your office, for example, it's time to focus on work, or when you step
Yeah.
into the gym, is it time to focus on your workout? So you still use that like imaginary line thing?
I think that 1,000,000%, I really, it's not the imaginary line, it's more of the identity, right? This is workout John. This is podcast John, podcast JD, whatever it is that gets me in that place where I know what I want from my physiology. What is that I'm going to focus on? What is it that is going to be my language, right? Like, I am a great listener. I am going to deliver the message to the best of my ability so that I can pour into the people that are listening and to the host,
Right.
and I think if I'm training someone, I'm going to be the best trainer I can be. I'm going to have the physiology of a trainer. I'm going to be prepared with an incredible workout plan. Then I'm going to have the language like, hey, we can do hard things. Let's really concentrate on the form. Here's the pacing. It's a 4-to-2 ratio. We're going to go slow on the eccentric. We're going to be powerful on the concentric. I
Right.
think like whether it's even being a dad or being a friend, right? It's different, right? Like when I'm in mindset coach, John, I might be, quoting Marcus Aurelius, but I don't want to necessarily do that when I'm with my daughter and be like, Marcus Aurelius said, and it's like, oh, Dad, I wanted some ice cream.
She'd probably be pretty entertained by that voice, though.
She could be, or be annoyed because she's 15.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, yeah, probably annoyed at this point, but at one point, probably very entertained.
For sure. Like a good joke, you got to keep going back to it in order for it to really set in.
Right. That'll be an inside joke for you, probably for her whole life. And you'll go back to that later and it'll bring her fond memories, even though she's probably rolling her eyes now.
Absolutely.
So, John, as someone who's been in the field of sports, exercise, and training your entire life, was there a specific moment in your career where you realized that the physical training wasn't really the most important part, and that maybe the most important part was mental or even something else?
It's interesting because I will tell you, the mindset is powerful, right? I think that, we've had a big change where this mental training is a very powerful part of life now, whether it's attracting the law of abundance, the movie and the book, The Secret. You got a lot of Jim Rohn and Tony Robbins and all types of amazing people trying to bring forth abundance into people's lives. And I think that, again, not to be a broken record today, is that a lot of this mindset things is to understand, whatever it is you want to be, right? Like when I go into the gym to work out for myself, it's right. I want to have that identity as like, I'm a beast, and I love exercise. Exercise loves me. I do things properly. I finish my reps. I put in the best effort that I can, because the gym is one place where it's one of the only places where whatever you put into it, you'll get out of it. And I love that. It's a 1-to-1 ratio. Very rarely in life is there anything where whatever you pour into it, you get it back. And so to me, that's just so phenomenal of a place. But was there an exact time where I'm like, oh, the mind is powerful? I think that probably in my late 20s, early 30s, you just see people that are excellent have an excellent mindset. Like, right? Like fear and faith take the same amount of energy, and you just see people that are generally excellent. They're believing that it's all going to work out. I call that a schlep rock, like a schlep rock from the old Flintstones teenage TV show, right? Like he had a cloud over his head and he's just like, wowsy, wowsy, woo, woo. And like everything was always going wrong for this guy. But right, in a weird way, he was materializing that. He was making that come to fruition as opposed to the other people that think it's going to work out. Takes the same effort mentally. It's just one of these situations where, what do you want to believe in? Do you want to believe in the fear of it or the faith of it?
Right. So I want to go back to a line that you said just a minute ago, because I wanted to talk about that a little bit more. And that was that you said, because I think it ties into what we're talking about right now, excellence doesn't like mediocrity and mediocrity doesn't like excellence. And also, another point, the standard is a framework, not a motivational idea. So there's a lot to unpack with just those two ideas. So I'm not going to direct you here, but when I say those things, like where does your mind go to about those two lines?
Well, I think about when we'll start with the standard. I think the standard is the standard. I think that when you want to set a standard for something, you really need to know what is the outcome that you want, right? Like you are a podcast host, right? There's a standard that you want, and it might be your headphones, your microphone, your lighting, whatever it may be. It might be one of these situations where you have a standard. You seem to have a high standard. It's a beautiful microphone. I can hear you extremely well. You can hear me well with your headphones. And you're on time. You use a platform in Riverside that's one of the premier platforms for podcasting. So to me, it's important to know what that standard is. And the one thing that I talk about is usually whatever part you have that is below your standard, that project will drop to that standard. So you might have everything up here, but then it just, your computer's slow and you have a slow internet. So you're down here. The whole project will then only be at that level. And I think that's what's one of the things that's important about having a standard. And it's like when you talk about these football coaches. These football coaches are usually, if they're any good at football coach, as being a football coach, is that they are driven by standards. And one of them might be meeting times. And someone might say, like, why are you so hard? If someone's not 5 minutes early on a meeting, they're late in your opinion. And the other side of that coin is 9:01 becomes 9:14 real fast. So if you don't maintain a standard, it will drop really quick. So in terms of the standard being the standard, I think that is one of the most important things you need to set for yourself, your life, your podcast, your business, whatever it may be, or your project will just be going off into the winds. You won't know where it's going to end up because of what's happening. And in regards to mediocrity not liking excellence and excellence not liking mediocrity, I think that's as much of a law as the sun coming up in the east and going down in the west. It's just a truth. In my life, I'm very lucky. I don't deal with a lot of mediocre people, but that's because I've developed a culture and a household where we don't allow those people through our doors. And it's not that we don't wish them well. It's just it doesn't do anything generally for my life, whether I'm training them, but if they want to come in once every 2 months and they're eating donuts as they're training, that's a waste of their money. It's a waste of my time in that component. And thankfully, as an adult, unless you have a 9-to-5 job or something where you have to interact with mediocre people, then you can choose the people on your bus. And if you choose excellence and love and connection, you're going to have an incredible life. I mean, to me, having a bus filled with people of excellence that love and pour into me, and that if I knew things were going wrong, they would pick me up and I can pour into them and pick them up when, life throws them a curveball. This is an extraordinary life. And I would wish that for all of your listeners and for you.
Very well said. And I think kind of an idea that I live by is that you become like the people that you spend most of your time with. So if you want to level up the people that you're spending your time with, because you become like the average of the people that you surround yourself with. So if you want your standard to be higher, if you want to be living an excellent lifestyle and life, surround yourself with high standard, excellent people. And if you are mired in mediocrity, there's no closer place than to look around you, and you're probably surrounded by mediocrity. So I think as a message and as a suggestion for our listeners, perhaps, wondering, well, what can I do? What can you take away from this episode? Among other things, certainly like look at who you're surrounded by and look at the things that you're doing in your life. If you want to do better things and be better and more successful and more financially well off and have better, happier, loving relationships, look no further than who you're surrounded with.
Yeah. And on that point, like one of the ways that I say it just slightly differently is have a real understanding of the people and the quality that you want and the people that you invite onto your bus. What is that ideal person? Is it someone more successful than you? Is it someone that is going for dad of the year? Is it whatever it may be? Like it shouldn't be just, oh, that person just got on my bus because they had a token. You should have a very written out version of the qualities of people that you invite on your bus. And by the way, you can be kind to everybody. So just because they don't get on your bus, it doesn't mean to be rude to them, mean to them. This is a very huge distinction to have, is that we should always give people grace and we should give them kindness and we should pour into as many people as we can. But the people that you're really letting into your inner circle, I would have the most stringent restrictions on that. To me, that's so important because that will determine the quality of your life.
Yeah, I think one guiding principle that I've been living my life by recently is how valuable my time is as a resource. And I'm kind of learning, and I'm 38 now, and we're always learning as we get older, right? I think that the brain never stops developing. But to your point about having standards and having things written down, like I've got a journal right here, you've probably got a journal, writing things down, specifically like knowing what your standards are, like writing things down can help with that. But as far as the time piece that I'm talking about, it's important to budget time for yourself and also giving your time to other people that are worth your time. So to kind of relate that to letting people onto your bus, like if you imagine time as a currency, would you just give your time to someone who's not worth it? You can still love them. You can still be kind to them, but are you going to give them time? Because time is very valuable for us, especially as we get older.
Oh, it's the most valuable commodity, 86,400 seconds in a day, right? Like if you got that every day and it's going to go to zero, who would you spend those dollars with, And it couldn't be more important. I think it's also when you waste time, what you realize how quickly doom scrolling or whatever it may be that you do that's not helping you maximize your life, that how much time that takes. The gentleman, his name's Jesse Itzler, I think. He's married to the woman who founded Spanx. He does a whole thing where 18 minutes a day, if you do something 18 minutes a day, whether it's playing guitar or basketball or whatever, you'll be in the top 5% if you do it for 365 days. If you podcast 18 minutes a day, 365 days, you will be in the top 5% of podcasters within 1 year. Like that's such an incredible standard. Like if you can just spend 18 minutes at something every day, whether it's walking, right? Like people that walk 18 minutes a day, they're good walkers. They're in the top 5%. Like it's funny because I have a friend that's slightly older than me and he's over 55, and that's a new like health class in terms of when you go to the doctor. And the doctor was laughing because he can run a sub 8-minute mile. He's like, where does that put me? And it's like, if you can run and finish a mile, you're you're in the top 1% of the world's population at 55 plus.
At all, let alone in under 8 minutes, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he might be in the top, 1% of 1%. Like, it's just a funny thing that you don't realize what the rest of the world is like. So that's why I always say, like, when you set your standards high, don't judge yourself against the mediocre people. You got to also judge yourself against the people that you're competing with. And that's what like the NFL Combine does, right? Like, boom, you ran a 4.3, the other guy ran a 4.27. He might go in front of you in the draft because he's a little faster than you. Might not. There's other factors, but they're measuring these very specific components at that draft.
I wanted to take a brief pause from our conversation to say the following. If you're finding value in this conversation, please do me a favor and hit subscribe. It genuinely helps the show reach more people who would benefit from this content. Please also consider dropping a like and leaving a comment. Let us know what's resonating, what questions you have, or what you want to hear more of on future episodes. I personally read every comment, so I'd love to know how this podcast is helping you grow. Your support goes a long way in keeping this podcast growing and thriving, so I appreciate you being here. And now, back to the rest of our show. Let's talk a little bit more about coaching now, specifically with respect to safety.
Sure.
And you've said that you can't coach someone, at least truly, unless they feel safe, and that without safety, they can never give you everything that they have. So in your experience, what does safety look like in a training environment? And is it important to build that before even asking for any effort at all from a client?
Great question. Now, when you say coaching, it obviously has such a wide net, right? It could be coaching a football team, could be coaching, like you said, what I do one-on-one. It could mean, coaching girls versus boys. So that's a wide net. So I'll break it down a little bit. I think that when you start and it's your first day on the job, you got to just make sure that before you try to get someone to tell them, for them to tell you all their deep, dark secrets and what they're not good at, or they're injured, or whatever it is that you may want to make sure you have all that good information so that you can coach them the best. You do have to lay the foundation of safety. And that could mean just keeping your word. It could mean, hey, if you say like the only kind of gear that's going to be allowed to be worn inside the cave is either unlabeled or cave labeled clothing. Right. And if I come down hard and say that's just the rules of the cave, which that is not the rules of the cave, but say that was, I'm using this as an example because a professional head football coach in the NFL did this. And then the next day he wore his old college's gear. So he threw off the whole safety and his trust, because here he is hammering, you can only wear this kind of, our team's gear inside of the facility. The next day he's wearing, all Butler stuff or whatever it may be, wherever he was a coach before. And the players are like, they lose respect. They don't know what the standard is, right? The standard was set up here. Now the standard's different. And so safety, whether it's, these players need to feel safe. So all these stadiums have these giant fences around them so that, and like there might only be this one little spot and there's a, pommel horse in front of it and a police officer so that fans can't just go bum rush the field, right? Practice fields and things like that for both NBA, soccer, football, baseball, so the players are safe, right? In the room, I think a coach will say, hey, nothing leaves this room. And nothing does leave the room, right? When the coach meets with them one-on-one or as a group or as, an entire team, they set the standard that, anything that is said inside of these walls doesn't leave these walls. If they hold that standard, they will make the team feel safe. If they then go to the sports center anchor and then blah, 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 stuff that just came out of that room, they're not going to have built safety. So I think it's super important. It's the same thing if someone shares something with me in a workout that's personal, and then I share it with the next person that walks in. I think that you need to, be a person of your word, but also at the same time, like, Safety is earned over time and over repetition of being the same person and generally having the same standard, and also discussing what that is. I think that you talk about, like this is a safe environment. You and I respect one another. I think you do a great job with what you do. I appreciate you having me on. We build off of that safety. And it's the same thing, whether it's a client, a team, and some people need more safety than others, right? Like safety is a subculture of certainty, or that Maslow pyramid level, right? And so I think that is different for certain people. Certain people might like to sleep in the dark where it's blackout, windows, blackout shades. They don't want to see a bit of light. And then there's someone that could be afraid of the dark. Maybe they need a night light. Maybe they need the light in the bathroom on. And that's just where they're at safety wise, right? And that doesn't mean you create unsafety by saying like, shut off that light. You know, you're a Damon. Shut that light off. No, you have to say like, hey, are you safe? What is scaring you? Where is this fear coming from? I'm here for you. Is there anything else I could do in order to have it be where you feel safe? What are you afraid of actually? Oh, someone's going to come out of the bed, from underneath the bed and kill me. Oh, well, guess what? If you feel that, you're generally not going to feel safe, right? You watch 3 horror movies before going to bed, and then you do this, like you might not feel that safe when you go to bed. And you got to understand the dynamics, right? Like the where that person's coming from. Is it from a safe environment, or is it from an environment that was not safe where, they lived where there was gunfire or gang warfare or whatever it may be that helped shape that young man or that young woman or that now old man or old woman?
So it sounds like it's highly individualistic, and what I'm hearing is the most important thing is to develop an understanding between the coach and the client, or the coach and the player, or whoever, whatever the relationship is.
Sure.
Develop an understanding of what is safe for that person, because it's different for different people, and it's important to understand what that is before you start moving forward with whatever it is that you're trying to work on.
Yeah, and that there are universal underlayers of the safety that are just part of being part of this team, or companies such as like my company, The Cave, right? Like I have 8-foot fences as opposed to 6-foot fences. My fence is straight up and down, and there's no seams, so that someone couldn't try to peek through the fence if they wanted to. And I think like all of these things you should think about before you build a company, or like it might be how you pick a location, right? Like it might be cheaper where it's not as safe, but if you're trying to do a luxury business, maybe that your clients won't want to go there because they don't feel safe parking in that parking lot.
Yeah, that
I think
makes
that's a
sense.
really valid component.
Yeah, I wanted to go back earlier to what you said during this segment about the NFL coach having this standard of you only wear this team's gear when you're here, and then proceeded to wear his college's gear the next day. So correct me if I'm wrong, but I understand that you draw a hard line between accountability and criticism. So where exactly does one turn into the other, and how do you catch yourself if you're drifting towards one?
Well, I think, right, you need to know the definitions of what those may be, right? And, there's an old Arnold Schwarzenegger line that said, if you have a complaint without a solution, you're just whining, right? And I think criticizing someone, like, it's interesting. I was just watching something last night about this, where if someone's just always leading with how much you stink at something, whether it's you're a bad tackler, you're a bad blocker, you're a bad, it was on the NFL Network last night. It said, Manatee Tayo, the guy that got catfished, was talking about he thinks he got out of the league because his coaches were so critical of him and criticized him, and that he thinks that if they showed him 10 of his good plays for every one of his bad play, they can focus on the bad play. But if they, in hindsight, if he thought he would have a better career if they showed him good plays after they were focusing on the play he made poorly, that it would have helped him mentally, because when he then went on the field afterwards, he would only visualize missing the play when the coaches want him to make the play, right? Like, in general, players win the games. Coaches have to do their job and outcoach and, get people in the state of mind in order to compete. But in terms of just criticizing, right? Like, not everyone at this stage of the game, my generation is different than the younger generation. The Tony Nadal just yelling shame and telling Rafa how much he stunk, that doesn't fly anymore, right? Like, when he was the coach for FAA and he yells shame, at some point in time, the kid's like, dude, I'm in the top 10. Like, I think my forehand's, pretty good, and you just can't criticize at such a level where you don't acknowledge what that person is or does well. And so I think, you know, in terms of trying to get the best out of someone, I think that you definitely need to point out what they did wrong, but only so that they can do it right. I think that that's the component, right? Like, this is what you didn't do. You stepped with the wrong foot first. You did this, but when you do it all right, here's what it looks like. And we think you can do it that way. I think there is more. There's more juice in that orange than if you just squeeze and just criticizing. Because also people need, in order to be a good teammate, they need to know how to do their job. And I think when you criticize, you might not be also teaching the person what their job is. Because I think if they have a really good understanding of what their job is, that they can do it. Because I don't think a lot of coaches do that. Like, when I talk to young kids and things, they say, what do you got to do to be a great teammate? They're like, oh, bring Gatorade to your team, pick them up if they fall down, go into the circle and give good enthusiasm. And I'm like, you get beat for 4 touchdowns as a cornerback. Like, you're not doing your job. You're not a great teammate. You guys lose by 4 touchdowns because you let up 4 touchdowns. Like, you're not a great teammate. And so the component of that is, can you help someone be the best teammate they can be by letting them know what their job is, and then giving them the tools to be able to do their job well?
Yeah, I think a lot of what you said there goes back to positive reinforcement versus negative reinforcement. In other words, the Manti Te'o example, like, you can coach someone and tell them what they need to be doing and show them, definitely the play that they missed, and this is where you went wrong, but then also showing them, here's all the plays that you did well. Here's what I want you to continue to do. This is the angle that you need to be taking, or this is the read that you need to make on this specific play. So you can hold someone accountable for what they need to do to make the team better, or the organization better, or the relationship better, or whatever it is, without directly criticizing them and making them feel bad about themselves and negative about the situation.
1,000,000%. I think that could not be truer. That positive reinforcement, it's everything. I mean, I think that, that's also part of when we talk about identity, right? Like, you're not saying bad things about yourself when you're saying, say you're saying you're a football player, right? Like, hey, I make big plays, I do my job, I'm enthusiastic, I go whistle to whistle. Your language should be all positive. My motor never stops, like, whatever it may be, like, I'll dive to make that play, like, it's all positive. Because I think that then the where that jumps to, that fear is a component of football and a lot of sports. And the only way to be courageous is to be the most prepared. And so being prepared does mean you need to know what you're going to do when things don't go your way. I think everyone's great at being up by 2 touchdowns. It's like when you're down 2 touchdowns, can we give full effort? I mean, that's where Tom Brady excelled, was getting the effort out of his team, even when he was down multiple scores.
Yeah, definitely. Especially, what was that, Super Bowl 53, 54?
Whatever it was versus the Falcons, for sure.
Yeah, yeah.
28-3.
Yeah. Yeah, so let's talk about another idea here. One that you like to live by is that rent is due every day. And
Just paid it.
I wanted to get your thoughts on that, because that could mean a lot of different things. So it's kind of, largely speaking, what does that mean? And then what is the day or scenario that tests that idea the most?
Well, I think that rent being due every day, right? That's such a great tool to use to make sure that you're maintaining the standard that you want to maintain. Say it's about having a great physique, or it's about being a good dad, right? Means you can't rest on your laurels. You've done it for 20 years, but then today I'm doing heroin and ignoring my daughter. Like, that's not in line with my standard. Rent is due. I got to be present with my daughter. I got to make sure she has food to eat. I got to take her to her appointments, whether it's cheerleading practice or soccer practice or school or whatever it may be. That rent is due, whether it's going to the gym or being a dad or being a husband. I think it's important to realize whatever you're doing, that you are doing it with the intentions of being very good at it. And that's what, to me, rent being due, because you just can't rest on your laurels. You're not going to just keep a picture of you when you're in your best shape on your forehead, and your shirt says, "I used to look like the guy on my hat," you know? And that's where rent is due every day. And now your second part of your question, if you could just repeat that.
Yeah, so what is the day or scenario that tests that idea the most?
Well, and I think that is based on whatever identity you're trying to be that day. Whether it is being dad of the year, is it being, the owner of your business of the year, the entrepreneur of the year? Is it the podcast guest of the year? Is it the friend of the year? I think that's really determining what one you are for that day and where that rent is due. I think that being present, if I'm a podcast ghost, but I was like looking at my phone or checking emails and I'm turning black and I'm wavering on what I'm talking about because I'm not present. I'm in the future or I'm in the past or I'm distracted. Then, I didn't pay my rent as the guest of a podcast. And that's disrespectful to you. It's disrespectful to my family. It's disrespectful to anyone that doesn't have that ability to be on a podcast because they either can't speak or don't have a voice or whatever it may be. So to me, whatever it is that you're involved in, whether it's just having a cigar with your friends or, like I said, hanging out with your wife, right? Like, are you loving on her like you're the husband of the year? Or is it just you're in a rut and so you sit on different parts of the couch and you don't snuggle and you don't let her know how amazing she is, And I think all of that, depending on whatever it is that was important in that moment, is what you should be doing at the standard that you would like to do it at. And I think that takes conscious thought. I don't think a lot of people put the conscious thought into like, what identity are they in at that moment?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there once again with the idea of being present. And one of the ideologies that I've been living by recently is I go to yoga pretty frequently, and yoga is a very spiritual mindfulness type practice. And I like going to yoga for a number of different reasons, but one of the things that I like is that the instructors frequently have like a weekly thought or a weekly quote from one of the Stoics or one of the philosophers or something, just to get you thinking about something. And one that really stuck with me recently, I heard this one a few weeks ago, was wherever you are, be there completely. And so that could be physically, it could be mentally, it could be where you are in a relationship, it could be where you are in business. But so many people are stuck in the past, thinking about things that happened, or having fear or anxiety or thoughts about what's going to happen in the future. And so few people are just really present right now with who they are, with what they're doing. And so I think that really ties into your idea of rent is due every day. Like, we need to be present every day. We need to be paying attention and, here in the moment every day for our relationships, for our business, for our podcast, for our friends, for our workout, for our diet, in order to maximize those things.
I couldn't agree more. I think that when you're having a great when you're speaking with friends, that when anyone pulls out a phone, it's like scene, like it's over, like everyone's they all scatter. It's like people's heads turn, this and that, and it might be that the person's even trying to connect, right? They're saying like, "Oh my God, you got to see this! Look at it's Donnie's baby," and but they can't find it. Like, you never can find anything as fast as you think you can. And when you do that, it just is a distraction where someone was looking you in the eyes, they were connecting, and all of a sudden you're like, yeah, that's not important. Let me get on that phone. And it will kill anything. That's one of the reasons why I do love smoking cigars with friends, male or female, because you somehow can't smoke a cigar and be on a phone. And so everyone is very present when they're smoking cigars. It's one of the best reasons why people should smoke cigars.
If there are reasons, right? It's like drinking.
Yeah.
If there are reasons to smoke cigars, one of them might be to be present in the moment with your friends and not on your phone, because there's a lot of value to that.
Will chill you out a little bit so you can really, have a nice conversation.
Yeah. I've seen research studies, and I believe this is true, where like even if someone has their phone out on the table, it is distracting, and it can be seen as like disrespectful, whether you're on a date with someone or with your child, mom, dad, friend, or whatever. Like, even just having the phone out there, particularly if it's face up. If it's face down, it's a little bit better, but just it being there is distracting and honestly kind of disrespectful.
I agree. I laughed because before you said that, I was just going to say there's a difference between having your phone out face up or face down. Like like if I'm a big fan of being curious, and the opposite of curiosity, in my opinion, is quick judgment. But when someone just has that phone out and they keep looking at it, then it's like, do you want to be here? What are we doing?
Yeah.
And that's where, in the human needs, like, we need to know that we're enough. But if you only need to know, like, that you crave significance, whether it's so many likes on a podcast or Instagram post or whatever it may be, then, you're going to be messed up, because in reality, you don't understand that pouring into the people that are around you or that you're on the phone with or whatever it may be, that's where you'll get fulfillment. You get fulfillment through relationships. There's that great documentary as a host of this podcast about sports and athletes. And Chris Everett talks about wins Wimbledon for the second time. And then when she goes to her hotel room, she lays on the floor and goes into an instant depression because she literally realizes she has no one to celebrate with, because all she has is tennis, and she goes through 3 marriages, and she realizes that tennis was more important to her than anything. And it wasn't until she had children, and then the children became more important than tennis, that she started to become a person that felt fulfilled, and she's number 1 in the world, one of the greatest of all time. And she wasn't fulfilled because she had zero love and connection.
Yeah, I think relationships are super important, and unfortunately, big problem in today's day and age with smartphones and social media and the lack of people just connecting in person.
There's no question. If someone has significance over love and connection as a need, they're going to be screwed up. And there's nothing wrong with liking a Ferrari, wanting a Ferrari, having a Ferrari, but you need to know that it's just a car. Right? If you think that's what's defining you, then you're going to be wrong every time. Because then once that doesn't do it, what do you have to do? Get a Bugatti? And then what do you do when that doesn't do it? Right? You end up on the floor next to Chris Everett in a depression saying, like, I have no fulfillment in my life. But it will come from, not that you don't have incredible materialism in your, at your disposal, but it will come from having not poured into people and them not letting them pour into you, and it will just, you will be screwed up.
Yeah. Well, John, I really appreciate you taking the time to speak with us today and for your insight and your wisdom and your expertise across a variety of different subjects. And as we're wrapping up our time together here, I'm wondering if there's anything else that you wanted to share about coaching people at an elite level, or anything that you hope to leave behind, your legacy of your life and your work, really any of those things. Is there anything else that you kind of wanted to touch on today?
I think one of the only things I wanted to touch on is that this might be the first podcast where we have two people, the host and the co-host, that have pro athletes or retired pro athletes as their namesakes, whether it's Justin Hebert or Johnny Damon.
Yeah.
This might literally be the first podcast of that nature. So I wanted to celebrate that. It's never happened to me before. So I was honored to be part of this, doppelganger podcast here.
That's right. That's right. I actually thought about that when I saw your name. You probably get that a lot. I'm wondering, is that why you go by John Damon as opposed to Johnny, or you've always gone by John?
You'll laugh. I think depending on the time of my life, I've been known as Johnny Damon. In Charlotte, a lot of people call me JD, Johnny D, John. I think that, like, I've been called, I always kid around and I say I've been called a lot worse. So you call me any of those, I'll probably answer. But yeah, no, I loved it. I was in Boston when, those idiots, as they like to call themselves, were running the town, and I was a young guy, their same age. And I just laughed because there was I don't know if it was a radio show or something, where when we met, I met the other Johnny Damon, and he was shocked because I'm taller, bigger, and I was in better shape than him. I'm like, you're like the only pro athlete that isn't the best shape of anyone that has their name. He's like, fuck, like, that's true.
This was probably back when he had the shoulder length hair.
Yeah.
This was what, like circa 2004 kind of.
He's wearing number 18. He's got the, they're all the Cowboys, Kevin Youkilis and Manny Ramirez and, David Ortiz and all these guys.
Yeah, I'm actually from New Hampshire originally, so big Boston fan. My family's always been. I remember watching those. I think it was 2004. They won they broke the curse of the Bambino, if I'm remembering correctly.
Sure. Yeah, it was either 2001 or 2004. One of these early millenniums.
Yeah,
but 1,000%.
My name, I pronounce my last name Hebert, but I believe it is a French name, Hebert, amongst others. But obviously, Justin Herbert being the superstar that he is, the LA Chargers quarterback now. I like to joke that if I was 6 inches taller, I'd be his doppelganger. But
maybe we're just alternate universe versions.
Yeah, could be. Actually, I take a lot of
incursion.
I take a lot of motivation from him, because people frequently, even before he was a star at Oregon and in the NFL, people frequently pronounce my last name wrong. Like, they'll just throw an extra R in there, which is, Hebert isn't like a super common last name. But I like to use he, as in Justin Herbert, as motivation, because he's so famous and popular, and he just got engaged to Madison Beer, and NFL is, I think, the most popular sport in this country at this time, if I'm not mistaken.
I would say it is.
Me being a podcast host and a mindset coach and a personal trainer, a lot of different things, but I'm kind of like, all right, well, now I've got some competition. So I need to get to the highest level so that people can look at my name and be like, oh no, he's him. Right. Yeah. And have some confusion there. Like, oh, which one is it?
Yeah. He's the one with no R.
That's right. That's right.
I love that though. But whatever it does, it takes to get us to, step up our game. I think that's awesome. No, to me, I think that people need to really just be themselves, find out what their identity is, and then, think about it and put some conscious thought in and find out what you want to do if you want to get better. I mean, some people might not want to get better. They have a pretty good life and, they're doing just fine. And that's awesome. I mean, to me, I applaud that. But if someone wants to get better, then let's step out of our comfort zone and let's pay some rent.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, John. If people want to find out more about you or your programs, I don't know if there's any websites or links that you want to share. I can include them in the description.
Go on Instagram, it's at John Damon. On YouTube, it's at the John Damon, where I think a lot of my podcasts and some other clips and all types of good stuff is that. And then my website is real simple too. It's johndamon.com, and we're redoing it. That's really been being used just to spark my gym building business. When I first moved to Charlotte, gym house builders didn't want to look through trainer, this, that, and gym builder. So we just made the website Gym Builder so that they wouldn't have to even, click different things. And now we have to go back and put all this other good stuff in. But yeah, I mean, anyone has any questions, I love pouring into people. So if you have a great question, please reach out to me and just give me some grace. I don't go on Instagram or whatever every day. So I'm that weird person that doesn't do that. I actually use it just more to communicate with good friends and my wife and my daughter than just scrolling. But it's been an absolute pleasure. I wish you nothing but amazingness, and may your podcast blossom, your business, keep those cats healthy, and just keep doing what you're doing. You're doing awesome.
All right, John, thank you very much. Well, I really appreciate the time, and good luck to you with all of your business and personal ventures as well. And we'll sign off here. We'll chat again soon in the future, I'm sure.
Look forward to it. Have a great day.
All right, John, you as well. Bye-bye.